Welcome, dear traveler. In the quiet of this moment, by the gentle crackle of an unseen hearth, let us wander together through the echoes of Middle-earth's most ancient lore. Close your eyes and imagine a starlit sky over a tranquil valley. Perhaps it is the hidden vale of Rivendell, where waterfalls murmur like distant music and the air itself feels alive with old magic. In this peaceful sanctuary, we shall begin our whispered journey through the ages of Arda, from the world's creation in the First Age, through the rise and fall of great powers in the Second Age, and into the wars and heroic quests of the Third Age. Each age flows into the next like a soft wave, and we will drift along with them ever so gently. A soft moonlit view of the hidden valley of Rivendell, where steep cliffs cradle a green valley lit by silver waterfalls. Under the moon's glow, an elven haven lies tucked amid the cliffs, a place of rest and lore. This tranquil image helps us imagine the peaceful setting in which our story is told. Feel the centuries slip by like a breeze as we speak of Valar and elves, of noble men and dark lords, in a calm and hushed tone. Let the weight of years fall from your shoulders. We are not in any hurry. Time in this tale is vast and unhurried. Relax and let the ages of Middle-earth unfold softly around you, like the gentle unfurling of an ancient parchment map. Our story begins before there was sunlight or moonlight, in an age of divine music and timeless night, when the world itself was but a song and a vision. The First Age. In the beginning, the music of the Ainur and the rise of Morgoth. Long before hobbits or men walked the green fields of Middle-earth, there was only music, a celestial music beyond hearing, deep in the void. In the beginning of days, the supreme creator, Ilúvatar, brought forth the Ainur, the holy spirits of his thought. He taught them to sing, each adding their own part to a great cosmic melody called the music of the Ainur. Can you hear it ever so faintly? The harmony of creation was rich and beautiful, echoing through the emptiness of space. But even in those earliest moments, a discord arose. One powerful spirit, Melkor, who would later be known as Morgoth, grew proud and impatient. He wove clashing notes into the music, seeking to bend it to his own will. A gentle tension entered the song, and for a time it seemed the harmony might unravel. Yet Ilúvatar simply introduced new themes, deeper and more beautiful, until even Melkor's discord became part of a grander whole. In the end, the music resolved in a final chord of immeasurable beauty, and Ilúvatar showed the Ainur a vision of the world their music had shaped. When the vision faded, Ilúvatar spoke a single word, let it be. And with that, the vision was given reality. The universe, was made, and within it, a place called Arda, the world, began to form. Many of the Ainur were so filled with love for this vision that they entered into the world to guide and tend it. The greatest of these became the Valar, the powers of the world, and their lesser kin were the Maiar. Think of these Valar as patient gardeners and artisans of creation, gentle Yavanna, making seeds sprout and flowers bloom, stern Aule, crafting the very rocks and metals underfoot, swift Manwe, lord of air and wind, watching from the highest mountain peaks. They took physical forms and dwelt in Arda to nurture it according to Ilúvatar's designs. In those first days, Arda was young and malleable, an unshaped canvas of continents, seas, and newborn skies. The Valar labored together to bring light and order, and at first all was harmonious. But Melkor, the very same proud spirit who had sown discord in the music, also entered the world. He hungered to rule this new creation, as the Valar kindled 2 great lamps to illuminate the world's first dawn. Melkor cast them down, shattering the primeval light and throwing Arda into darkness and chaos. Thus began the first shadows. The Valar retreated to the western land of Valinor, where they created 2 trees of light to illumine their realm, even as Middle-earth lay under starlight. In Middle-earth's dimness, Melkor built himself a dark fortress and bred twisted creatures, giant spiders, dragons, and the first orcs, turning the world's freedom into tyranny wherever his shadow fell. Under the stars, the first children of Ilúvatar, the Elves, awoke beside a silver-lit lake. They beheld a world of dusk and twilight forests. The Valar, wishing to protect these elves from Melkor's corruptions, invited them to the safety of Valinor. Many elves made the great westward journey, drawn by the guiding light of the Valar's 2 trees. Yet some remained in Middle-earth, preferring the starlight and the wide lands. In time, one by one, the suns and moons of later ages would replace the ancient light of those 2 trees. But in this first age, the trees' radiant glow was a treasure known only to those in the blessed realm across the sea. Middle-earth itself glimmered under Varda's newly kindled stars, making it an age of starlight, wonder, and often great sorrow. As ages passed in Middle-earth's starlit twilight, Melkor, now named Morgoth, the Black Foe, pursued dominion over all life. Noble elves who had lived in Valinor, led by the proud prince Fëanor, rebelled and returned to Middle-earth, seeking to challenge Morgoth. Fëanor's most prized creations, the radiant Silmarils, jewel-like crystals filled with the light of the 2 trees, had been stolen by Morgoth, who set them in an iron crown, swearing a terrible oath to recover these holy jewels. Fëanor and his kin fell under doom. Their fury was great, yet so were the tragedies it wrought. Wars erupted across the land of Beleriand, as the elves and later newly awakened men fought, wave upon wave of Morgoth's creatures. By day, the sun, a new light sent by the Valar after the 2 trees were slain, gilded the battlefields. By night, the moon shone cold on ruins and restless seas. Many heroes rose and fell in this epoch. Mighty elven kings with bright swords, mortal men with brave hearts faded to brief lives. Even some repentant Maiar and wayward elves who secretly opposed Morgoth from within his own ranks. Their stories became the stuff of lullabies and laments. In whispers, we recall names like Beren and Luthien, who dared to infiltrate Morgoth's fortress to reclaim a Silmaril, or Fingolfin, the Elf King, who rode alone to challenge Morgoth in single combat under a darkened sky. These tales drift by like fragments of a dream. You need not remember every detail, only feel the weight of ancient grief and hope they carry. Despite fleeting victories, the free peoples could not defeat Morgoth on their own. At times, despair nearly extinguished their spirit, like a candle guttering in a cold wind. By the end of the First Age, vast swathes of Beleriand lay in ruin, and Morgoth must have believed his triumph near. But hope endured in the most surprising places. A single mariner, a half-elven man named Arundel, sailed across the Sea of Night, bearing a Silmaril on his brow, its pure light guiding his ship through shadow. He reached Valinor, as if in a gentle dream, and knelt before the Valar to beg their aid. And the Valar listened. For the first time since ages uncounted, the host of the West Immortal Valar and elven warriors of the Blessed Realm marched forth to Middle-earth. Thus erupted the final conflict of those elder days. the War of Wrath. It was a battle immeasurably vast and catastrophic, shaking the very foundations of the world. Under storm and lightning, great dragons swept from the sky breathing fire, only to be cast down by the eagles of Manwë and by Arundel himself, who took to the heavens in his ship turned flying vessel. The armies of Morgoth were utterly defeated by this onslaught of light, and at last Morgoth was thrown down. In a moment that felt like the soft breaking of a long curse, the Dark Lord was chained and banished forever into the timeless void, far beyond the circles of the world. His reign of terror, which had lasted centuries, ended with a thunderous finality. The First Age came to a close with both devastation and deliverance. In the war's wake, entire lands were swallowed by the sea. Beleriand sank beneath the waves in a great cataclysm, as if the world itself sought to wash away the blood and sorrow of those days. Survivors of the elves and men looked westward at the new sea, mourning the lost havens of Beleriand, but they also felt a calm dawn of hope. Evil had been vanquished for a time. The Valar, in their mercy, lifted a new land from the sea as a gift for the Edain, those men who had remained faithful and brave through the long wars. This was Elena, the Land of Gift, better known as the Island of Númenor. And so, as one age gently flowed into the next, the Second Age began, promising a quieter world where those who had endured so much might find peace. Take a deep breath. The worst of the darkness has passed. For now, in the lull that follows, picture the sun setting over a peaceful ocean, the waves lapping softly at newly formed shores. A great island sits on the horizon, green and golden, awaiting its people. Together, let us sail into the Second Age on those calm waters, leaving the sorrows of the First Age behind, like fading constellations at dawn. The Second Age, rings of power, the rise and fall of Númenor. The Second Age of Middle-earth opens in a golden haze of renewal. Morgoth's shadow had been lifted, and a blessed respite fell upon the world. Far across the sea, on the star-shaped Isle of Númenor, the gift of the Valar bloomed into the greatest kingdom of men that ever was. Close your eyes and see it. White ships with bright sails arriving to a welcoming harbor, tall men and women with joy on their faces stepping onto fertile soil, the fragrance of Yavanna's gardens in the air. The Númenorians, also called the Dunedain, were granted long life, wisdom, and glory. Under gentle skies, they built shining cities and high temples, learning crafts and lore from the elves, who sailed often to their shores. For many centuries, Númenor was like a song of happiness made real, a land of gift indeed. The elves of Middle-earth, meanwhile, established realms of their own, places like Eregion, where master craftsmen toiled in friendship with dwarves, or the forest realm of Lindon, under the wise elven king Gil-galad. Peace lay across the world, like soft sunlight on a quiet afternoon. Yet even in peace, subtle shadows can grow. In the eastern and southern wilds, where the Valar's light had barely reached, evil things lingered, and among them, the memory of Morgoth's most cunning servant, Sauron. Sauron was a Maya, a lesser immortal spirit, who had been Morgoth's lieutenant. After his master's defeat, Sauron hid for a long while, plotting in secret. Over centuries, his malice rekindled. Fair and clever, he decided to deceive rather than dominate outright. Disguising himself with a pleasing form and silvered tongue, Sauron ventured forth to corrupt the hearts of elves and men. In Eregion, he appeared to the elven smiths as an alluring stranger, calling himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. With charming whispers, he offered to teach them knowledge they craved, the craft of preserving all things unstained by time. The elven artisans, led by Celebrimbor, were eager to learn. Who wouldn't desire the skill to make beautiful things endure? Under Anatar's guidance, they began forging magical rings of power. These rings, they believed, would be tools to heal the hurts of the world and protect their realms from decay. The smiths forged ring after ring, from lesser trinkets to rings of great might. Eventually, they created 16 rings, splendid works meant for the dwarf lords and the kings of men. Celebrimbor himself, without Anatar's help, made 3 rings more, the fairest and most potent, to be kept by the elves alone. For a moment, imagine the delicate beauty of these rings, each set with a gem catching starlight, each one humming with enchanted power. The elves were joyful, thinking these rings could be used to preserve the wondrous realms they loved. But Anatar's kind smile hid a dark intent. In secret, Sauron returned to the volcanic fire of Mount Doom, and there, with cruel purpose, he forged one ring to rule all the others. Into this one ring, he poured a great part of his own power and will, crafting it as the master ring that could dominate the bearers of the others. The moment Sauron put on the one ring, the elves became aware of his treachery, as if a dark voice suddenly echoed in their minds. Horrified, they snatched off their rings and refused to use them. Sauron's gentle mask fell away, revealing the tyrant in full. In wrath, he demanded the elves surrender all the rings of power to him. They defied him, and so began a fierce war. Sauron's armies of orcs and corrupted men stormed Eregion. The elves fought valiantly to protect their work, but Eregion was laid waste in the onslaught. Celebrimbor, last of the great craftsmen, was captured and tortured. Under torment, he revealed where the 7 rings for the dwarf lords were kept. Though he died without betraying the 3, Sauron seized what rings he could, including 9 rings intended for powerful mortal men, and distributed them to those who would serve him. Kings of men, tempted by promises of glory and secret power, accepted the 9. Dwarven leaders took the 7, but all of them had been ensnared. The men who bore the 9 rings fell deepest under the one ring's thrall. Their lifespans extended unnaturally, and their forms faded into unseen wraiths. They became the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, Sauron's deadliest servants, neither living nor truly dead, enslaved to his will. The dwarves, stout of heart, proved more resistant. The 7 rings inflamed their greed for gold, but could not turn them into wraiths or make them bow to Sauron completely. Still, all these rings sowed seeds of ruin, wars over treasure, the rise of tyrants, the slow tightening of Sauron's shadow upon Middle-earth. Through this darkening time, the island of Númenor watched from afar. Initially, the Númenorians were friends and allies to the elves. They sailed often to Middle-earth's coasts, bringing aid and enlightenment to younger tribes of men. As Sauron grew in might, they came to the aid of the elves of Lindon and Eriador. In a grand campaign, Númenor sent forth a navy so vast it covered the sea like a moving forest of masts. Their armies, shining with steel and order, defeated Sauron's forces in battle, driving the Dark Lord into retreat for a time. This should have been a triumph, singing of hope, and yet pride silently took root in Númenorian hearts. With victory came confidence, and with confidence came restlessness. The Númenorians had long lifespans, much longer than ordinary men, but they still remained mortal. As centuries passed, they achieved unparalleled feats of engineering and art, their cities gleaming with white towers and their ships exploring far waters. However, the very gifts that set them apart also bred envy. Some began to resent the immortality of the elves and to fear the inevitability of their own deaths. Whispers spread in Númenor's markets and halls. Why should we, the favored of the Valar, still taste mortality? A shadow of discontent crept over that blessed isle. The once reverent Númenorians gradually turned away from the Valar and the elves, focusing instead on worldly riches and power. They were like children of the dawn, growing impatient for noon, reaching beyond natural limits. By the time Ar-Pharazôn ascended as Númenor's 25th king, this pride had reached its peak. It was then that Sauron, ever cunning, saw an opportunity. Sauron had survived his defeats. Though diminished, he was far from gone. In his bitterness, he now hated Númenor most of all, and he devised a plan to destroy it from within. Allow yourself to picture a seemingly impossible scene. The Dark Lord Sauron as a captive prisoner in Númenor, yet smiling as though content. Ar-Pharazôn, hearing of Sauron's resurgence and titles, Lord of the Earth, King of Men, decided to prove the might of Númenor. He sailed to Middle-earth with overwhelming force. So great was Númenor's military power that Sauron's servants fled without a fight. Sauron knew he could not prevail by arms, so he surrendered willingly, allowing himself to be taken back to Númenor in chains, but with secret triumph in his heart. Within a few short years, Sauron went from prisoner to advisor to the king. With honeyed words, he fed Ar-Pharazôn's vanity and stoked the Númenorians' fear of death. He introduced the worship of darkness, even of Morgoth, promising that Morgoth could grant them immortality. Slowly, the beautiful island was corrupted. The white tree of Númenor, a symbol of the Valar's grace, was cut down and burned as an offering to Morgoth. In place of open friendship and light, a great black temple was raised. There, under Sauron's guidance, dreadful sacrifices were offered in secret to the dark. The air of Númenor filled with unease, a far cry from the gentle laughter and sunlight of earlier days. Only the faithful, a minority of Númenorians who still revered the Valar and kept friendships with elves, resisted this shadow. They met in secret in quiet coastal villages or under the sighing branches of Nimloth's sapling, a secret seedling saved from the felled white tree. Their leader was Amandal, and among them was his son Elendil and grandsons Isildur and Anarion. These faithful clung to hope and prepared ships, sensing a coming doom. And doom was indeed gathering like black clouds over the western sea. Aging Ar-Pharazôn, fearful of his mortality and whipped into prideful madness by Sauron, finally decided to defy the ultimate ban. The Valar had forbidden Númenorians from sailing so far west that they would come upon the undying lands of Aman. But Sauron convinced Ar-Pharazôn that if the Númenorians could set foot on Aman, the immortality of the gods and elves might be stolen. A gift wrested from the lords of the West. In folly and arrogance, Ar-Pharazôn built the mightiest armada ever known. The Great Armament, it was called, a fleet of warships so numerous that their sails were said to blot out the sun, laden with soldiers and weapons. This vast fleet departed Númenor's shores, breaking the ban of the Valar and heading toward Aman itself. One can imagine an eerie stillness falling over the world as those proud ships, gilded and sable, approached the immortal shores. The Valar, witnessing men invading the Undying Lands, laid down their guardianship of the world and appealed to Ilúvatar directly for intervention. What came next was beyond the craft of any song to fully capture. Ilúvatar responded in wrath. The very shape of the world was changed. A great chasm opened in the sea. Númenor, fair Númenor, with all its splendor and sin, was swallowed by the ocean in one night, utterly destroyed and lost forever beneath the angry waves. The invading fleet was swept away as well. Ar-Pharazôn and his soldiers setting foot on Aman were buried under falling hills, trapped for all eternity in the caves of the Forgotten. In that cataclysm, Sauron's fair form was destroyed too. He drowned with a bitter laugh upon the sinking island. Though his spirit endured, from that day he could never again assume a pleasing visage. The Undying Lands of Aman were removed from the circles of the mortal world altogether, taken beyond the reach of men. Earth became round, so that any mariner sailing west on the straight road would simply circle back to the east, unless permitted to find the hidden path to Aman. Thus ended Númenor in a downfall both tragic and just, a tale of unmatched glory ruined by pride. Yet this is not the very end, dear listener. Some few of the faithful Númenorians, forewarned by ominous dreams and their own wisdom, had set sail before the disaster. Led by Elendil, elf friend and son of Amandil, and his sons, these survivors were borne east by the storm of Númenor's ruin. When calm returned, they found themselves upon the shores of Middle-earth. Tall mountains loomed ahead, and the sea sighed behind. Elendil and his people thanked the Valar for their deliverance, with heavy hearts for their lost home, but hope for the future. They established new kingdoms in Middle-earth, Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south. The exiles of Númenor carried with them a few precious relics, a seedling of the White Tree, the 7 seeing stones, Palantiri, and knowledge out of legend. They remembered the lessons of pride, and for a while they prospered humbly on Middle-earth's western shores. Meanwhile, deep in the black land of Mordor, Sauron's spirit congealed again around the One Ring which had not been destroyed. Though robbed of fair form, he rose now as a terrible shadow, a dark lord in a menacing fortress called Barad-dûr. His hatred for the survivors of Númenor, especially Elendil's Dúnedain, was unquenchable. Barely a century after Númenor's fall, Sauron launched war upon the fledgling realms of Arnor and Gondor, determined to dominate or destroy these last bastions of the Edain. The Elves of Lindon, led by Gil-galad, knew they must stand with the Dúnedain or all would fall, and so was formed the last alliance of elves and men, a great union of free peoples to challenge Sauron's might one final time in the Second Age. Envision a vast host assembled at the misty vale of Rivendell, elves in shining mail carrying tall spears and bright banners, Númenorian knights in wing-helmed armor, grim dwarves with axes on their shoulders, even hardy archers from out of greenwood, and brave Northmen. They pledged an oath together, sealing it in the name of Eru Ilúvatar himself, that they would not rest until Sauron was defeated. The last alliance marched east over the towering misty mountains and down into Sauron's realm. In the Battle of Dagorlad, on the black plains before Mordor's gate, they met Sauron's legions of orcs, trolls, and corrupt men. The battle raged beneath a dimming sky for days uncounted, but at last the alliance drove the enemy back. Sauron's forces fell behind the ramparts of Barad-dûr, his dark tower, which the alliance then besieged for 7 long years. Imagine the endurance and faith required. Year after year camped in that desolate plain, hope and fear wrestling in every soldier's heart. The siege wore on until Sauron himself, in desperation, emerged from his fortress to break his foes. On the slopes of Mount Doom, or Adruin, the mountain of fire, Sauron descended upon the leaders of the Alliance. He appeared as a towering warlord, black-armored, wielding a mace, and bearing the one ring on his finger which glowed like a lidless evil eye. In that final confrontation, King Gil-galad of the Elves and King Elendil of men fought side by side against Sauron. The duel was dread and ruinous. Both Gil-galad and Elendil were struck down and slain by Sauron's hand. Their fall seemed to herald the end of all hope, yet hope oft survives where least expected. Under the very bodies of those kings, broken upon the rocks, the sword of Elendil lay shattered. Elendil's son, Isildur, seizing the hilt shard of his father's sword, took a desperate chance. As Sauron loomed over him, Isildur swung the broken blade and cut the one ring from Sauron's hand. With the ring severing, Sauron's physical form was immediately ruined. His great shadow dissipated with a howling cry, and his army scattered in terror. Sauron's body was destroyed, and his spirit fled far into the dark shorn of power without the one ring. Thus, in that decisive moment, the Second Age ended in victory for the last Alliance. Picture the aftermath, the clouds parting over the corpse-strewn plains of Mordor, a gray morning light falling on the survivors as they stand in weary disbelief. They had won. Middle-earth was saved from darkness, and a new age was set to begin. Yet it was a bittersweet triumph. Isildur picked up the fallen one ring, a plain gold band now cooled and quiet, and claimed it as Weregild compensation for his father's death. The elven lord Elrond and Círdan urged him to cast the ring into the fires of Mount Doom, where it had been forged, to destroy it utterly and end Sauron's threat forever. But the ring's whisper was already working its temptation. Isildur refused to destroy this beautiful, precious thing. It was an heirloom of his house now, he insisted. And so Isildur kept the one ring against all counsel. This choice, made at the very cracks of doom, meant that though Sauron was vanquished, his malice was not entirely spent. The Third Age would inherit the burden of the ring and the shadow that came with it. For now, though, rest in the knowledge that an era of peace followed. The Third Age dawned with many farewells. The alliance of elves and men gradually dissolved. The elves, sorrowed by losses and weary of Middle-earth, began to dwindle and depart to the west. The dwarves returned to their halls, and the men of Gondor and Arnor took up the responsibility of guarding the free lands. Elrond, bearing the elven ring of air, one of the three hidden from Sauron's touch, led his people into a refuge in Rivendell, preserving knowledge and healing for the ages to come. In Minas Anor, later Minas Tirith, and Númenos, the Númenorian exiles built new cities, vowing to watch against any return of evil. The One Ring, however, proved treacherous. It betrayed Isildur not 2 years after the war. On a journey north, Isildur was ambushed by orcs, and the ring slipped from his finger in the river Anduin. Bereft of its magic of invisibility, Isildur was seen and slain. The ring sank into the river's mud, lost and forgotten by all waiting. Generations turned like the pages of a large, gentle book. Kingdoms rose and waned. The ring lay dormant underwater, even as Sauron's spirit slowly crept back, exerting a malign influence from afar. But for many centuries of the Third Age, people could almost believe evil was gone for good. Think of quiet villages of men tilling their farms under the sun, hidden elven realms like Lothlorien, where time seemed to stand still under golden malern trees, hardy dwarves toiling in their mines and forges, and small hobbits, a new diminutive people in the land of the Shire, who knew nothing of wars or rings, and who celebrated each day with good-tilled earth, food, and pipeweed. The world was gentler, if less grand, and yet, little by little, shadows lengthened again. By the midpoint of the Third Age, whispers spoke of an eerie necromancer taking residence in Dol Guldur, a fortress in the darkening greenwood, henceforth called Mirkwood. Wise ones suspected this might be Sauron in disguise, slowly regaining power. The wise, the Astari wizards like Gandalf, and elf lords like Elrond and Galadriel, kept vigilant watch. And what of the One Ring? It didn't remain lost forever in the river. Fate, or something greater, saw to that. By chance, the ring was found by a river-dwelling hobbit-like creature named Sméagol. Consumed by the ring's corrupt whisper, Sméagol hid with it in lonely caves, becoming the pitiful creature called Gollum. And so the ring passed the long years, a secret in the dark, sustaining Gollum's life through unnatural centuries as it quietly waited for its time to come again. All these threads of chance and doom converged when, much later, a hobbit of the Shire named Bilbo Baggins stumbled upon that very ring during a peculiar adventure in which he met Gollum beneath the misty mountains. Bilbo, in his unassuming honesty, claimed the ring as a prize of riddles and carried it back to the Shire, unaware of its true nature. For decades, the ring lay in Bilbo's pocket, slowing his aging and whispering in the back of his mind, yet causing no great harm in the wider world. But the time was ripening. The Dark Lord, now returning to Mordor openly, was actively searching for his lost treasure, when at last the wizard Gandalf the Grey confirmed beyond doubt that Bilbo's magic ring was the One Ring of Sauron. A great and perilous task was set in motion, a task on which the fate of all Middle-earth would quietly turn. Thus we come to the War of the Ring, the grand climax of the Third Age. Yet it begins not with armies and clamor, but with a single quiet decision in a shady garden in the Shire. Bilbo's heir, a young hobbit named Frodo Baggins, learned that he had inherited the One Ring, a thing of terrifying power. Realizing that Sauron would soon discover its location, Gandalf urged Frodo to bear the ring away from the Shire, to keep it out of the enemy's grasp. Feel the enormity of this moment. A humble soul in a peaceful land, stepping forward to carry an almost unbearable burden out of love for his home and friends. On a soft autumn morning, Frodo, with 3 loyal hobbit companions, Samwise, Merry, and Pippin, quietly slipped out of the Shire. The journey of the ring-bearer had begun. Frodo's path was darkened almost immediately by the pursuit of Sauron's servants, the Nazgul, those 9 ring-wraiths, now cloaked in terrifying black forms, galloped through the night, sniffing for the ring. Frodo and his friends escaped by narrow margins, hiding under trees as a rider sniffed above them, fleeing on a ferry across a river just as a shadowed figure arrived on the bank. The world was growing more dangerous with each mile from home, but help appeared in unexpected places. In the ancient forest, the enigmatic Tom Bombadil rescued them from malevolent trees and ghosts, a mysterious, merry being, immune to the ring's lure, who sent them on their way with songs. In the bustling human village of Bree, Strider, the ranger Aragorn in disguise, became their guide and protector, leading them through wildlands. On the hill of Weathertop, Frodo was wounded by a Morgul blade wielded by the Witch King, but he endured, buoyed by hope and Sam's steadfast care. Finally, at the hidden valley of Rivendell, yes, that same Rivendell we imagined at the story's start, Frodo found sanctuary. In Rivendell, under the healing hands of Elrond half-elven, Frodo recovered. The greatest of the free peoples gathered there in what came to be known as the Council of Elrond. Many voices were heard in that council. Elves spoke of the growing shadow. Dwarves brought news of unleashed evils. Men told of the enemy's moves. At last the wise realized that the ring couldn't be hidden or used. It had to be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom where it was forged, the only fire hot enough to unmake it. But who would carry it into Mordor, the very land of the enemy? In the hush of that council, Frodo found himself softly saying, "I will take the ring, though I do not know the way." It was a brave whisper that decided the fate of the age. Thus was formed the Fellowship of the Ring, 9 walkers to oppose the 9 riders representing the free peoples. Frodo the Ring-bearer was joined by Gandalf the Grey, Aragorn, none other than Strider, revealed as the heir of Isildur, destined to reclaim Gondor's throne, Legolas, the elven prince, Gimli, the dwarf warrior, Boromir of Gondor, and Frodo's own dear friends, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. They swore to protect Frodo and help him achieve the impossible quest to destroy the ring. The Fellowship's journey was both perilous and beautiful. They attempted the mountain pass of Caradhras, but cruel weather, perhaps sent by Sauron's malevolent will, thwarted them with deep snow and howling winds. Turning aside, they took refuge in the ancient underground realm of Moria, where once a great dwarven city thrived. In the dark halls, under columns like stone trees, the Fellowship moved in silence, seeing hints of both past splendor and recent horror. Abandoned guardrooms, broken axes, dwarf skeletons. In those depths, they were attacked by orcs and a Balrog, a demon of fire and shadow from Morgoth's ancient host. In a climactic stand on a narrow stone bridge, Gandalf faced the Balrog. With a flash of light and a cry of, "You cannot pass," he broke the bridge beneath the monster, but the Balrog's flaming whip dragged Gandalf down with it into the abyss. Gandalf fell, sacrificing himself to let the others escape. The remaining 8 companions emerged, stricken with grief, into the serene woodlands of Lothlorien. There, under the golden leaves, the Lady Galadriel comforted them with kind words and gifts, and Frodo felt the ring's burden lightened for a while by the elves' healing song and the mirror visions Galadriel showed him. After a brief rest, the Fellowship continued by boat down the great river Anduin. At the falls of Rauros, their path forward had to be chosen. Go east to Mordor or turn west to aid Gondor. But the decision was never made in council. Events overtook them. Boromir, succumbing to the ring's seduction, tried to take it from Frodo. Frightened and realizing the ring was putting his friends at risk, Frodo decided he must continue alone, or rather with only Sam, who insisted on coming. In a tearful yet oddly peaceful moment on the riverbank, Frodo accepted that the Fellowship's companionship had to end for the quest to succeed. He and Sam took a small boat across the river, setting off alone toward Mordor's dark peaks. Meanwhile, orcs sent by Sauron's ally, Saruman, a wizard who had fallen into evil, attacked the remaining Fellowship. Merry and Pippin were captured, Boromir was killed defending them, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli were left to mourn Boromir and decide their next move. Ultimately, those three set off in pursuit of the captured hobbits, intent on rescuing their friends and avenging Boromir. The Fellowship of the Ring, as such, had ended, broken but not defeated, scattered but each segment still bravely playing its part. Now the War of the Ring burst into open flame across Middle-earth. The quiet heroes of the story, Frodo and Sam, trudged into the ashen desolation of Mordor, while the more visible theater of war unfolded elsewhere. The wizard Saruman, having bred his own army of orcs, sought to destroy the kingdom of Rohan, but through the courage of Rohan's people, the Ents, ancient walking trees, and Gandalf's unexpected return from death, now as Gandalf the White, having defeated the Balrog and been sent back, Saruman was defeated at Helm's Deep and Isengard. In Gondor, the Dark Lord Sauron launched his main assault. His innumerable orcs, trolls, and evil men besieged the city of Minas Tirith, trying to snuff out the last light of men. The siege of Gondor was terrifying. Great siege towers rolled up to Minas Tirith's walls. Flaming missiles crashed, and the Witch King flew on a fell beast over the ramparts. But at dawn, when hope was nearly lost, the horns of the Rohirrim echoed. King Theoden of Rohan and his riders had arrived and charged heroically into the enemy host, their spears gleaming in sunrise, scattering the darkness. The ensuing battle of the Pelennor Fields was the largest of the age, a cacophony of thunderous hoofbeats, clashing steel, and the cries of valor and death. In that battle, King Theoden fell, but not before his niece Éowyn, with the hobbit Merry's aid, did the unthinkable. She struck down the Witch King himself, fulfilling an ancient prophecy that he would not fall by the hand of man. Aragorn also arrived via the river, leading a fleet of ships and an eerie host of oath-keeping ghosts. Yes, even the dead played a part to crush the remaining foes. Minas Tirith was saved. For a moment, the world drew a hopeful breath, but the ring still had to be destroyed, and Frodo and Sam were on the brink of exhaustion in Mordor's wasteland. Dressed in plain Orcish rags, they crept through ashen valleys and slag hills, ever under the looming gaze of the Dark Tower and the burning eye of Sauron that searched for them. Their loyal former guide, the creature Gollum, whom they had tamed for a while, ultimately betrayed them, luring Frodo into the lair of Shelob, an ancient, monstrous spider. In that lightless tunnel, Frodo was stung and paralyzed by Shelob's venom, and Sam narrowly saved him by driving the spider off with elven blade and sheer courage. Believing Frodo dead, brave Sam took the ring himself, determined to finish the quest if he could. But soon he learned Frodo still lived, captured by orcs. Sam then mounted a desperate rescue from the Tower of Cirith Ungol, freeing Frodo from cruel orc captors. Reunited, and now utterly alone behind enemy lines, the two hobbits began the final leg of the journey across the cracked plains of Gorgoroth toward Mount Doom. Each step was torment under the weight of the ring and the fumes of Mordor, yet they pressed on, sustained by their indomitable friendship and the faint memory of the Shire's green gardens. Sam at times even carried Frodo when his master could no longer walk, so strong was his love and resolve, knowing that Frodo would need as much distraction as possible to succeed. Aragorn and Gandalf led an army of the West, a relatively small force of the remaining soldiers of Gondor and Rohan, to march on the Black Gate of Mordor. It was a suicidal feint intended only to draw Sauron's eye away from his own land. At the Black Gate, Aragorn's army stood surrounded and vastly outnumbered, but they showed fearless defiance, a final act of faith that Frodo would fulfill his task. And indeed, far away on the slopes of Mount Doom, Frodo and Sam at last reached the crack of doom, the fiery chasm within Orodruin. There, at the very edge of success, Frodo found himself unable to let the ring go. The ring's will overpowered him at the final moment. With despair, we recall Frodo declaring, "The ring is mine," and placing it on his finger. But the ring's malice backfired upon itself, for Gollum, who had tracked them out of obsessive need, attacked invisible Frodo, biting off the ring finger and all. In his wild joy at reclaiming his precious, Gollum stepped too far and lost his balance. The ring, along with Gollum, fell into the mountain's molten lava. In an instant, the ring that had shaped so much history was unmade at last. A great doom rumbled from the mountain's heart, and the volcano began to erupt violently as if the evil binding it had been released. Frodo and Sam escaped the cracking peak just in time, rescued by great eagles as they lay unconscious amid the lava flows. At the very same moment, before the Black Gate, Sauron's hosts faltered. The Dark Lord's power was irrevocably broken. The vast shadow guarding Mordor collapsed. Barad-dûr's towers crumbled. The Nazgûl were consumed in flame, and orcs and trolls fled or fell mindless without their master. The War of the Ring was won. The One Ring was destroyed, and Sauron was utterly overthrown. What a gentle sigh of relief coursed through all living things at that moment. The enormous weight of fear and oppression that had so long lain on Middle-earth blew away like smoke on the wind. The Third Age ended in a eucatastrophe, a joyous turn that few could have predicted. Against all odds, the smallest hands had done what the greatest could not. Frodo and Sam, once recovered, awoke to find themselves hailed as heroes in the field of Cormallen, with all the captains of the West bowing to them in honor. The realm of Gondor, saved from ruin, celebrated the return of its king. Aragorn Elisar was crowned in Minas Tirith, taking up the ancient throne of his ancestors. His rule heralded the reunited kingdom of men, fulfilling long-sundered hopes. There was song and springtime in Minas Tirith. The white tree bloomed anew, the city's bells rang clear, and Aragorn wed the Lady Arwen, Elrond's daughter, renewing the bond between men and elves. In the distant Shire, the four hobbit travelers returned to find their homeland needing a small dose of its own courage. Scouring the Shire, they called it, as the hobbits roused and drove out the last mischief makers who had troubled their land in the hero's absence. Soon the Shire healed and flourished, its inhabitants hardly aware of how the wide world had been saved on their behalf. And so, as all things must, we come to an ending, but a soft and hopeful one. In the Fourth Age, which now began, the dominion of men fully arrived. The elves knew their time in Middle-earth was over. Their rings had lost power with the One Ring's destruction, and the magical grace that once preserved their realms began to fade. One by one, the immortal elves heard the call of the sea. They embarked on white ships at the Grey Havens, sailing away to the undying lands far in the west, beyond mortal reach. Among those who took ship were the great ring-bearers themselves, the wise Elrond, the golden Galadriel, and even dear Gandalf, all carrying the 3 elven rings that had preserved Middle-earth's beauty in small pockets. With them, specially invited, went Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, who had borne the One Ring and whose souls carried its scars. It was a bittersweet farewell, full of tears and gentle smiles. At the Havens, Frodo shared a final embrace with his friends Sam, Merry, and Pippin, whispering to Sam that he had saved the Shire, and now he must heal in lands where pain could not follow. As the white ship departed into a rosy sunset, those left behind felt both sorrow and an inexplicable peace, as if a long, heavy tale had at last found its restful conclusion. The Fourth Age dawned quietly as the Age of Men. King Aragorn reigned wisely over a reunited Gondor and Arnor, ushering in an era of peace and rebirth. The remnants of the dwarves and hobbits continued their lives, growing and crafting in relative peace as the tales of old settled into myth and memory. Magic and ancient powers slowly faded from daily life. The very few elves that lingered would soon journey west. In later years, Middle-earth grew more worldly, moving from legend into the early whispers of our own mortal history. For Tolkien imagined that the Fourth Age is, in truth, the deep past of our own world, when the last enchantments lapsed, and what remained slowly became the earth we know. Even so, Middle-earth's echoes never truly vanished. In the rustle of forests, some hear the Ents' ancient voices. In the taste of salt air at the sea's edge, we feel a pang like the elves longing for the west. In every act of unexpected courage, we remember little Frodo and Sam on the fiery slopes of doom, proving that even the smallest person can change the course of the future. These legends live on in soft lullabies, in the names of distant stars and hills, and in the hearts of all who love tales of heroism, friendship, and hope. Now our long journey through the ages comes to a gentle close. Night deepens again over the valley of Rivendell in our imagination. The fires of war have given way to the silver light of peace. High above, Arundel's star, that same Silmaril born by Arundel, shines brightly, a symbol that hope and light endure beyond darkness. Middle-earth sleeps, healed and at peace, as the Fourth Age unfurls like a new dawn. And you, dear listener, can rest as well, knowing that even in the greatest turmoil, steadfast courage and friendship prevailed. The echoes of Middle-earth's lore will forever reassure us that light can outlast the dark, that even after the heaviest storms, the sun will return with a gentle warmth. Sleep now, if you wish, to the soft memory of immortal elves departing across a starlit sea, to the thought of a white tree blossoming anew in Gondor, and to the comforting notion that somewhere in a green shire far away there is a homely lamp shining in a round window and a kettle just beginning to boil. All is well. Middle-earth's echoes will sing on softly in dreams.